Hey friends, welcome to the library or welcome back to the library. I have with me today author River Bennett. I'm super excited. First of all, I'm obsessed with your. Let me see. You sent me a little. I don't know if it was with Angie. I feel like Angie was cohort in this, but I got a little package from you a while back, and it had all of the little add-on stuff for your Olympus novel, and I am obsessed with it.
Oh, thank you.
Tell us a little bit about how you got started reading or writing.
Well, I've always been a reader. Like, whenever I was young, reading was my escape. I loved just disappearing into other worlds. And for some reason, it never occurred to me that I could write.
Hmm.
So it didn't, I don't know why, but like it just never seemed like something that I could do. So I never even considered it as a possibility. And then at some point in my 20s, I did try to write a book and it did not go well. And I was just like, okay, I don't think my brain is organized enough for me to be a writer. I just don't think I'd ever be able to come up with something cohesive and keep it all from being chaotic. And then a couple years ago, I guess, oh wow, it's almost 2 years ago now. A friend of mine, Ophelia Wells Langley, she's another author. She was like, I'm thinking
Hmm.
about doing NaNoWriMo, but I don't really want to do it by myself. And I was like, well, hey, maybe I could give it a shot. Maybe this would be the kick in the butt to maybe try writing again.
Yeah.
And I did, and it went amazing. And I'm still just in shock that that actually happened, and that I was able to get a book written, and that I now have a second one written that's almost done with edits. And it's it's surreal to me that I've actually been able to pull this together and make writing happen.
That's really fun. So now I'm gonna just go ahead and jump straight into the controversial. Are you still using NaNoWriMo? Do you?
I am not associating with NaNoWriMo in any way, shape, or form whatsoever. And you can
It's
quote me on
unfortunate.
that. Yeah.
It's unfortunate the way that things kind of roll in situations like that. And I asked that mainly out of curiosity and not to like actually stir the pot or anything because I'm not 100% familiar with the situation, but it was just one of those like, was exiting with them part of like a whole process for you? Was it like a defining point as far as anything for you?
I would say it was whenever I first heard about the first controversy before this AI controversy with them. When I
Mm-hmm.
heard about their first controversy, I was like, I'm done with them. And there's a part of me that's like, oh, maybe I wanted to do Nano again, and because it was so successful for me the last time, and it felt like an important part of my writing journey. But then I sat down and I was like, do I actually need Nano anymore? And I didn't. Like, and even if I did need it, I still would have found another way to get the same effect without participating in Nano. Um, but I realized that it was very easy to walk away from it because I don't need it at all anymore.
Mm-hmm.
I don't need that motivation of get 50,000 words in a month to get my book done. Like, it was great for the first book and it showed me that I can do this, but I don't need it anymore. And so there's no chance that I would continue to associate with such what I feel is a harmful organization at this point.
Gotcha. Okay. I always love to see everybody's difference of opinions on like, one on the controversial subjects because like there are things like our reviews for readers or authors or and just the back and forth on that, and then how AI can be helpful and harmful because there are different ways it can be used, and then all of those things. And while I find there's like any great story, I feel that there's always like a morally gray character. There's always like a morally gray situation in all of this. Like in a situation for my job, I deal a lot with the music industry, and so we see a lot of AI copying voices and creating songs that are not copyright or anything.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so while like it takes away from the actual work that real artists do, it also is really helpful if for in an instance like our business, we need to do demos for an example of what a message would sound like if one of our voice talents actually recorded something for someone and we were able to mimic their voice and do a short 15-second demo message for that person. And so in which case it was helpful, but it could also be harmful because then some people would feel like, they're taking away from what the voice does. And all of our voices have been like, oh, that takes, so much weight and so much work off of us for us to focus on other things so that we don't have to do the demos. But like I said, morally gray, there's always like two sides to every story.
Yeah, I really feel like it depends on the industry. It depends on the
For sure.
individual people involved and stuff. Like, I work in the comic book industry, and
Mm.
my partner is a Marvel and DC cover artist, and he did the covers for my books. And we've seen his stuff be fed into generative AI, and I've, watched all of his peers, great names in the comic book industry, that their work is being fed into generative AI systems, and, comic covers are being put out that are just rip-offs of other artists because
Mm-hmm.
it's just stealing their work. And so I really feel like it depends on how it's being used. Like the way you said, I don't think there'd be anything wrong with that, because like if you're doing that as an example, then if whoever you're showing that to liked it, then that artist would then probably record that, I'm assuming. Like,
Yeah.
you're not
Yeah.
taking the work away. Just like I don't mind assistive AI. Like assistive AI is
Yeah.
fine. It's the generative that I tend to not like and tend to disagree with. But again, it depends on the situation. It depends on the industry. It depends on if harm is being done. And like, it doesn't sound like that it is. There's all the silly TikTok AI songs and
Mm.
stuff that like, I don't know that they're harming anything. I don't love them, but I don't know that they're harming anything. So it's so
Yeah.
weird. Like, I feel like we let technology get away from us, and now it's so far ahead of what we can comprehend that we don't even know how to process it.
Yeah, I 100% agree. That's like, I actually sent a video to my husband earlier, and it was an example of how AI really has gotten away from us and how much damage it can do. Just for those who maybe have not seen this, but there was a situation where a hacker from the Hong Kong area, I believe, managed to replicate a young girl's voice and called the girl's parents pretending to be the girl that was kidnapped and basically demanded, I think it said like $1 or $2 million from the parents. And luckily enough, the girl's parents thought to actually contact the girl and say, "Hey, are you okay?" Like call her back. But it was so much of a replication that they were not able to tell in that moment that it was not her. And so it was just a video saying, like, make sure you have your code phrases with your loved ones, picked out, and that you're extremely careful about like what you do and what you say. And because all of that can be pieced together. And I've always had the belief that the internet is forever and you have to be very careful about how you portray your life and what you put out there. But that was just kind of like one of those shocks to me because I was like, they were able to replicate her voice to a
That's
degree where
wild.
like, yeah, yeah.
That's horrifying. Like, absolutely horrifying.
Mm-hmm. And like, obviously I grew up with the internet. Like I was born around the time that the internet was created. So I'm literally the same age as the internet. That's kind of, so but as I've watched it progress, there has always been this level of, there are creeps, so you can't post you can't post photos of like, my parents and my elders were always like, you don't post photos of yourself in a bathing suit or, you don't post photos of young kids just because they're that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But I never in a million years thought it would get to this point where it's like to a degree of like iRobot or something where they're taking over. Like it's just
Yeah, I
weird
feel
and
like we're
kind of
reaching
sad
the levels of a sci-fi film, and
for sure.
it's terrifying. And
100%.
it's and it's so prevalent in the writing, it's like you see so many authors now that say, boldly, openly claim that they use Chat GPT and stuff to help them write. And I'm like, what are you talking about? So I have to compete with people who are putting out 40 books a year because they're using AI, and like,
Yeah.
and then who is the Chat GPT stealing that from? It
Yeah.
frustrates me. I hate seeing the harm that it's causing, and I think that's where some of my like autistic sense of justice comes in, and it just makes me so mad seeing people harmed by something that is just so stupid, in my opinion.
No, I'm there with you 100%. But I do feel like it also very like heavily affects everyone else in a manner of like, what is my process going to look like? Because along with AI being generative now, and that being a version of stealing, especially within the author community, when you're using ChatGPT in that way, if you're looking at it from once that's already done and you've written your authentic work to you, and to your best of your knowledge, what you have is not. They're always worried about us in high school taking other people's words and not realizing that we're doing it. But there's also the piracy issue, because it is so very easy to go in and just go, oh yeah, I have this copy of this that I downloaded onto such and such device. Because when you send out, I mean, even with like, but even if you use like Book Funnel or Book Sirens, like, yes, it's going to give you like the email address of whoever it was designed for, but that doesn't stop anybody. I mean, they can still upload it anywhere.
Yeah.
And it's sad, because then I'm like, how much do how many authors feel like they can't keep writing because of this, or they don't want to keep writing because of this? Or how many of them had to change to where their process of writing a book and or publishing a book has to be way more complicated than it should be because of trying to protect themselves from this.
Yeah. It's very disheartening to see all the piracy. It makes you wonder whether sending out ARCs is even something you should do anymore. And that is so frustrating because, I usually send out anywhere from 50 to 200 ARCs of things,
Mm-hmm.
and I have no problem sending my book out for free, especially as an ARC. Yes, I'm just always so happy that people are just reading my book. Like, that's what I care more about, especially while I'm trying to establish myself as a name in the indie
Mm-hmm.
author sphere. Like, I care more about in this early stages people just reading my book than I necessarily do about trying to turn a profit on this. That's something that I'm prepared for it to take a long time, and
Mm-hmm.
so I'm trying to play the long game. And the arcs are such a huge part of that long game, and it really frustrates me that I have to question whether I should even be sending those out.
Yeah, 100%. Especially because, like, there are so many people that ARCS is one of the main rate. And, like, yes, there is KU, and yes, there are bookstores, and yes, there are libraries, but there are a lot of people who ARCS are one of the main ways that they get to access books. Like, being able to apply for those teams or apply for those books to get onto the ARC, because not everybody has expendable money that they can purchase for, and library cards are not always free, contrary to popular belief. So it's one of those, like, yes, we may have a public library, and granted mine is free for the county that I live in, and it's connected to the next city over, but there are, like, one, only so much is accessible in that library. And two, you can only have, I believe it's like so many at a time for a certain amount of weeks. And if they're anything like I am, you know, I can't be at the library every single day, but I can read a book a day.
Yeah.
I'm thankful enough to be able to have the ability to have KU or Kobo or, 300 books in my house, but not everybody else can do that, can afford to do that, have the storage, etc. And we're back on the subject of reviews being for the author and the reader both. It's detrimental, especially to our indie authors. Those first 50 to 100 reviews within a certain amount of time of the book being published are detrimental to how well Amazon pushes your book, how well you're getting to be seen. And with the, I cannot even with the social media algorithms. I talked to somebody not too long ago and I was like, I run my own pages, personal and Bookstagram, and then I run the pages for the podcast, and I cannot imagine having to do that as an author and like coming up with all the marketing being the sole way of marketing, because I am lucky if I post on my Bookstagram once every 6 weeks. Like, it is so sparse.
Yeah. I had to get a PA because to make content for me, because if it's left up to me, I'm just not going to do it, because I don't have the intuitive brain for like making posts and stuff like that. And I could learn it. I could learn how to do it. But if I'm taking all the time to learn how to do it, I'm not going to be writing. If I wanted to be a social media influencer, that's what I'd be trying to do. But that's not what I want to do. I want to write. And so it's so frustrating to have to do both. And so, yeah, I did just finally have to hire a PA to make reels and like flat lays for me.
Yeah. And it's there's like this level of you have to post so many times in order to have them being seen, and then if they're not, it's so complicated, and it's no longer just like share this with my friends who are following me. It's frustrating.
Yeah, it's just my brain is not designed for that.
Yeah.
And it's so frustrating. Like, I just want to post and for people to see my posts. They don't have to go mega viral, but could you show it to more than 200 people, please?
Honestly. Okay, so tell us a little bit about about your process when it comes, like, are you a pantser? Are you a plotter?
I would say I'm a little bit of both. I have to work with an outline that's usually pretty detailed, but I don't necessarily stick to the outline. Like, I allow myself room to change my mind in the middle of it and adjust the rest of the outline to make it work. Because sometimes, I'll have an epiphany while I'm 3 chapters in. And so I leave it open to changes, but I try to work within an outline, because sometimes it's hard to sit down and just make myself write. But if I know what I'm supposed to be writing, then it's easier to just sink into that mindset and just get it done.
Yeah.
So a little bit of both. When I first started, I used like cork boards and index card, like different colored index cards or Post-its for each POV and stuff. And it was, it was a lot. And I loved my boards, but I feel like I don't need them anymore. And they were a lot of work.
Yeah. Do you feel like your experience with NaNoWriMo changed that or enhanced that process in any way?
I feel like my experience with Nano probably was one of the things that made me do an outline the first time, because I was like, okay, I've got limited time, and so it would be better if I knew going in when I sit down to write what I need to be writing, or at least have a general idea. So I did it to kind of save myself some mental processing time. And I don't know that I necessarily would have done that without Nano and without that time crunch.
Yeah. Do you feel like that inhibited your creativity in any way?
I don't. I feel like that's why I allow room for changes, because I feel like if I have a direction that I'm going and I know where it's supposed to be headed overall, then, sometimes that makes it easier for me to get lost in the world. And then once I get lost in that world, stuff starts feeling right or wrong for the story.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's usually where I tend to make changes, is if something doesn't feel quite right, or if a scene just kind of naturally evolves into something else than I intended. Um, and so I don't feel like it really inhibited the creativity.
Yeah. So when it comes to inspiration for stories and characters, where do you think the majority of that stems from? Like, I feel like most authors have a piece of themselves in all of their characters, but can you like pinpoint any one other or multiple other places?
Well, so it depends on the story, but usually I will see something out in the world that gets my gears turning, and then I
Mm-hmm.
start figuring out how to make like a solid story out of that. Excuse me. And then a lot of times, my lived experiences do make their way into the story in one shape or form, but sometimes they don't. Sometimes it's just completely different from anything I've experienced. Um, yeah, so I kind of get inspiration everywhere. Like, so for
Mm-hmm.
Heroines of Olympus, I saw this statue of um, Medusa with the head of Perseus. And I was just like, wow, that's so powerful and empowering. And it got me thinking about Medusa's story, and I felt like she just got such a crap deal. And I was like, I should write that. I should write the story where she kills Perseus instead of him killing her, and then a whole world just sprouted from there.
Okay. Have you ever I have some others that I've asked this. Have you ever thought of, like, obviously you got that inspiration from seeing something, but have you ever thought of writing outside of that genre? Like maybe thriller, mystery? Like obviously there's probably some mystery adventure in that story, but
I'm open to writing different genres. I've had a few like contemporary romance ideas and stuff like that, but then
mhm.
I tend to anytime I have one of those ideas, I tend to shift it to a fantasy world. So I think I just like writing fantasy better. I feel like it's less restrictive, if that
Yeah.
makes sense, because I don't like writing in the current world as much, because I feel like we're already living in the current world, and not everybody reads to escape, but I read to escape, and so I write for people who want to read to escape.
Yeah, 100%. That, and that's, I mean, that's 100% true. There are so many of us who do read to escape, and it's not even just like escaping bad situations, but it is a form of therapy. Like you can find a different version of yourself, create a different version of yourself, um, learn a lot of different lessons, and so many other things. Um,
I completely agree.
I'm like over here staring at my bookshelf, like, well, maybe not me because I read a bunch of dark romance, but maybe we don't need to think about those. But
I feel like I also, I feel like my books are a little bit of therapy, like you said,
mhm.
for the right people, because there's a lot of like, for example, Medusa, of course, girl's got a lot of trauma, like a lot
Yeah.
of trauma, and so use her as a way to remind people that their trauma does not define them and stuff. And so I
Hmm.
like taking these characters and these situations and being able to put stuff in there that I think will be helpful to people who might be struggling with some of the things that my characters are struggling with.
Hmm. So, do you read at the same time you write, like read other stories?
It is so difficult for me to read and write. Like I'm lucky if I get a book or two in a month read. And so I tend to read more when I'm taking breaks from writing and stuff. And then I don't read Greek mythology at all. Like I've read Circe, but that's about it. I don't
Yeah.
I don't want to be influenced by anybody else's versions of their Greek worlds. And so I don't read Greek mythology. I will sometimes read fantasy romance, but it has to be very different from anything that I'm working on. So I
Mm-hmm.
tend to go with a lot of like contemporary romance, or like I recently read Pumpkin Spice and Poltergeist by A.K. Mulford and K.L. Morrison, and that was just,
Mm-hmm.
it was set in the regular world. There's like a little urban fantasy, but it's just a cute little book, and I'm like, that is what I can usually read whenever I'm writing or taking a break, and I try to stick to stuff like that.
Okay.
Which is sad. My bookshelves in my study that are just full of books that I haven't read.
Well, same, but not because I write. It's just because I have problems. I feel like this is everyone has problems, but to the extent of I started a chapter challenge where in part of the Discord that I'm in, and instead of like keeping track of how many books we read, it's how many chapters because they're a little bit more manageable. But we were all talking about it when we finished the August, because I've done August and September and I'm part of October, so I'm currently trying to keep up with it. And we after we finished August, we were in one of the chats and somebody was like, I don't understand, like this is really helping me tackle my TBR. And my response was, you would think that, but what happens is I end up buying books to read for the challenge and technically adding to my TBR and then taking it off as I'm reading it. Like it's not truly tackling my TBR because I'm buying books in the mid, like
Yeah.
you would think I would be reading stuff that's been sitting in my shelves in here for the last 2 years, but no, I'm reading new stuff that I just bought. Like I'll happen upon something on Instagram or TikTok and I'd be like, oh, that's interesting, and immediately go over to Amazon, buy it, and then start reading it. And I'm just like, what is wrong with me?
Yeah. I have so many books that I was planning on reading, and then I was influenced by TikTok, and one of my friends was like, you have to read The Spell Shop. So I was like,
Okay.
fine, fine. So now that's what's queued up on my Kindle and Audible. I'm just like, fine.
Yeah. I also have this problem where I'll start a series and read the first book, and then it'll be like a year later before I read the second and following books. Like I did it with Akatar. I read the first one, and then it took me 6 months to convince myself to go buy the rest of them. So, and then I read the other four in 3 or 4 days. Like I devoured them. And then I read From Blood and Ash a year and a half ago as part of a group read for the bookmark journey. And then immediately I had the second one. So I picked up the second one and started reading, and I got 10 chapters in, and then I put it down and I haven't touched it since. And then like on the 1st of October, I picked it up and finished that book and immediately went to the next one and read it in less than 24 hours, and then turned around and picked up, now this is technically the fourth one. The fourth out of and I'm like halfway through it, and I'm like, okay, so it didn't take me as long to get through this one as it did the second and third, but like, what is wrong with me? Why did it take me so long to finish this series? And like the same thing happened with the Knock 'em Out. I read Things We Never Got Over first, and then 6 months later, I finally picked up Things We Hide from the Light. And I've read Crave, but I haven't read the others. I'm a problem.
No, I've done that as well. Like, I absolutely loved Between Wrath and Mercy by Just Wisecup. Like, I absolutely loved that book, and I still have not read the second and third books in that series. Same with The Witch Collector. Like, absolutely loved. Like, those two books influenced me to start writing. I absolutely loved them, and I have not read any of the others in the series yet. So, like, I completely understand that. I want to get back to them, but I just haven't yet, unfortunately. Maybe I'll take this COVID time to do a lot of reading.
Yes,
Although, to be
yes.
fair, I do have a lot of work to do still.
Well, I mean, you could even your time out between the two.
Yeah, spend a little bit working and then spend the rest of the day reading.
Yeah, that's doable.
Yeah, I think so.
So, tell me a little bit about, if you can, your work in progress.
I'm currently working on Curses of Olympus, which is book 2 in the Olympus trilogy. And it's been through, it's completely written. It's been through the dev edits. It's been through the line edits. And I had another friend take a look at it, and I'm just going through her notes and probably going to try to add about 10,000 words to it because the word count is a little bit lower than I'd like it to be. So I just have a little bit of work to do on that one, but it shouldn't be too bad. And then I do actually have a work in progress that I haven't really told anybody too much about. And I won't share the title, but I will say that it was influenced by a woman that I learned about who during World War II, I believe she was a nun, and she would like lure Nazi soldiers like off and then kill them. And I was just
Okay.
like, all right, Queen. All right. I
Yes.
see you. I think you need a story. And I created this, fantasy world with like elves, and when I say elves, I mean like Tolkien, not Keebler.
hmm
And so, there's their version of like a convent and nuns and stuff, and like an evil dictator and
hmm
stuff. And so, but I also thought it would be fun to give this character some of my disabilities. Like I have POTS and vasovagal syncope, which
hmm
the POTS means I need lots of salt or I'm at risk of fainting. And the
hmm
vasovagal syncope means when I see blood, I faint. And so I thought it would be so funny if I had this character who's essentially like an assassin, and she faints at the sight of blood.
God, oh my gosh, yes.
So I thought that would be I thought that would be interesting. I've been having a lot of fun writing that, and I had to take a break once I got my edits back on Curses of Olympus. So I'm very eager to get back to that one. And
Oh,
if
that sounds
everything
like
goes
fun.
according to plan, that one will be coming out in like early May.
Early May, people, mark your calendars. Don't forget it. It's gonna happen.
I still have plenty of time, so
Listen,
I think I can do it.
yeah, I'm not going to forget about this. I'm going to make sure it's on my calendar. To me running to my calendar right now, like, okay, listen, we're going to go through this.
That's so funny. But yeah, that story made it. That story jumped. Like everybody has a TBR list. I have a TBW list, which is to be written.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
this, when I had this idea, it just like jumped to the top. And all these other ideas that have been patiently waiting for their turns, they're just watching it happen, and they're like, "What? No, we were next." So
Excuse me, ma'am. May I have a turn, please?
yeah, so it just completely stole my heart, and I was just like, "No, I have to write this now." So it's so funny how that
this
happened.
is this is going to be fun. I have a feeling that this is going to be one of the okay, so much like I have this thing for reading stories that have very snippy characters
Mm-hmm.
that are it's this I love the tension and the like the back and forth, and I just get she's going to have this personality of just like a sassy, like I get this feeling from
Yes,
you.
you are
It's very sassy.
very correct. Very correct about that.
So like
Her
listen,
name is Astra, by the way.
yes. I have a thing for the characters who like to
So
stabby, who are a little stabby.
a little spoiler about the book, but she uses a lip balm that's made from wolfsbane, which is aconite, and is poisonous,
Okay. Mm-hmm.
but she's immune to it for reasons that I will not share those. But she is immune to it. She's not sure why, but she's immune to it. And so since she can't handle the sight of blood, she uses this lip balm and gets the guys to kiss her. Doesn't always go according to plan, but,
Wow.
but that is her method. That is her MO.
All right. Well, you heard it here first, folks. The kiss of death is real.
Absolutely.
I'm telling you, I'm going to be like, let me just make sure I write a note for future self who is editing this. Please make a note to
When we
check
hang
your
up,
calendar.
when we hang up, I'll send you on Facebook the character art that I had commissioned that I haven't shared with anybody. Which the love interest in that book is basically death. It's a death spirit that they're not really a spirit. It's a non-binary character named Charis, which is a Greek word that does mean death spirit, but their role is to the dictator has Charis under their control, and they have to, any of the dictator's men, if they pass, Charis is supposed to make sure they end up in the good afterlife, no matter what they've done. And so they're like ferrying the spirits to the afterlife and stuff. And that's who's in the character art. And I'm trying to explain this the best I can without giving too many spoilers. But for aesthetics, I gave my artist pictures of Emma Darcy.
Okay.
So like Charis is supposed to look like Emma Darcy. And it's just this non-binary, just absolutely gorgeous being.
Golly.
Yeah.
Listen, I am a fiend for character art. I work with N. Owens, and she has a couple stories. One is a Peter Pan retelling, and everyone's going to hear it from me first, but she had I think she has it on maybe one of her social medias. You'll probably have to dig for it if you go look, but there is this scene that she wrote that has to do with more than one, a gentleman and the young woman, and they're all on the couch together and getting busy, and I'm trying to work it out in my brain as she wrote it, and I'm like, this seems highly acrobatic. So I told her, I was like, listen, while this sounds really interesting and highly acrobatic, maybe can we relook at this? And she was like, I'm going to have character art printed of this scene. And I was like, I need you to know right now, I need one, whatever it takes. I was like, I don't care. This scene will be forever imprinted on my brain.
That's so funny.
We may or may not have made it a little less acrobatic whenever we finish the alpha readings, but yeah. And then there are some other books that she had character art of. One of them is Darkest Dawn, and it has to do with those stinking neon masks. The black and neon masks that are really popular for book covers over the last couple years around Halloween.
Mm-hmm.
Golly, I have a thing for masks. I don't. Anyways, character art. Your character art was lovely, and my obsession. I probably need to take a grippy sock vacation, but it's all right.
I'm glad you liked my character art. Thank you.
That's the way to that is literally the way to get me roped in at any point in time for any story is show me the character art in whatever interesting positions they may or may not be in, and I'm in for it. Like, I, especially if they're naughty positions, I'm here for it.
Yeah. I've spent an ungodly amount of money on character art, so much. Oh my gosh.
But there's like an invaluable piece to that, though.
Oh,
Being
absolutely.
able to put your written work into a picture, because, like I said, it's really easy to rope me in with character art, and there are plenty of readers who are like that because they want to see into your mind as the author. Because while your description typically does them justice, it's also the point of what my mind makes those characters look like may not be what your mind makes them look like. So
Oh, absolutely.
while your description of tall, dark, broad-chested and shadowy features may be one thing, mine is going to be completely different because I have uncles who are tall, dark with shadowy features with broad chests.
Yeah.
So I have an uncle who's, 6'5" with a forearms that are as thick as my thighs, like 2 hands wide, you know. And so this man is literally like a freaking linebacker. He probably could have gone NFL if he wouldn't have got hurt, but this man is a linebacker.
Yeah.
Was a linebacker for many years. So when I think broad chested and stocky, that's what I think. So when someone says like tall, dark, stocky, broad chested, I'm just like, all right, so that man with dark hair and a more growly face. And for me, it just feels weird because that's my uncle. But at the same time, like, some people, okay, for example, if you're looking at like Haunting and Hunting, some people pictured Zayd with like a broader chest. I
Mm-hmm.
pictured him not like scrawny, but not exactly broad chested neither. Like, at the base of his core, he's a tech nerd.
Yeah.
So there was no way I wasn't going to give him like a slight haunch to his shoulders. And I mean, even though he's still technically an assassin, I mean, it's in some form of the way, if that's without really spoiling anything. But you know what I mean? Like, that
Yeah.
perception is going to, because in my mind, he's still the tech nerd that started, you know what I mean? So it's not like if you tell me a football guy or you tell me a tech nerd, like, just automatically those things give you different perspective. And so for you, like, okay, Target has these like 7, 8 foot tall skeleton looking things. I guess it's actually a skeleton. I don't know that it's actually depicted as a skeleton, but it's dressed in a robe, much like what Kieran was dressed in. If you're looking at like Percy Jackson, whenever they were getting ferried.
Yep.
Okay, so in my mind, when you said, and I forgot the character's name, but the death. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
I got a version of that in the long, dramatic, dark robe. Although I know they are a physical being, that's what my mind went to. And I'm like,
Yeah.
I already know that's not what she's talking about. But in my mind, it's this like ether of a person who's not like physical flesh and bone.
Yep. No,
This is why
totally.
character actors are important, because I
Yes.
would not have gotten what I like. You're probably sitting here thinking she's crazy if that's what
Oh
she thought.
no, there's tons of readers, and myself included, that have aphantasia, which is
Yeah.
where you can't see images in your brain.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's one of the reasons why I spend so much on character art, is because I want to make sure that the readers, especially the ones who are, really struggle with seeing these pictures of the characters in their heads when they're trying to read. I want to make sure that they have something that they can look at where they know what the characters look like.
Mm-hmm.
And so its perception is so different, and the loose words that we as authors tend to use to describe characters leave a lot of room for interpretation, and so that's totally understandable.
Yeah. And I feel like it obviously, like, that's not necessarily a bad thing because everybody's going to have their, like, everybody thinks that Rhysand looks okay. First of all, a lot of the character art for Rhysand and Asriel looks similar,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't agree even in the slightest. And while Cassian is technically like dirty blonde hair,
Is
I
he?
felt
Does he?
like
Does he? Did I miss that?
I'm pretty sure that's how a lot of the character arc
Interpretation
depicts him
coming
as
into
like a
play.
yeah.
I'm like,
A
wait
lot
a
of the
minute,
character
what?
yeah, a lot of the character art depicts Asriel and Rhysand as like very dark black as night hair.
Yeah.
But I always pictured Asriel as broader even though he makes himself smaller.
Yeah.
And so, first of all, anybody who argues this with me can just argue this with me, but Asriel has the largest wingspan. And with that being said, he visibly makes himself smaller, even though I feel as though he is the strongest between the three of them, physically wise, because Rhysand is the most power magically wise. So, out of the respect that he has and the life that they have shared, you know what I mean? But
Mm-hmm.
a lot of the time when you're looking at that character art, all of them, even though Cassian and Azrael have the 7 siphons, all of them show the 3 of them as similar build.
Yeah.
And the depiction, maybe in Sarah's mind, was meant to be that way, but in my mind, it wasn't that way. And there are a lot of people who would have been like, no, Cassian was the biggest. That's why he, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah. Well, to be fair, I really think that with a lot of this character art that's done, I think that pretty much every male fantasy character gets depicted with a build like Henry Cavill. And
yes.
I feel like I find that very frustrating because everybody's like, oh, body diversity in women, body diversity in women, body diversity in women. It's like, well, men have a lot of body diversity too. And those bodies are just as beautiful, just the same as it is with women. And so I get tired of it being this one specific body type that's always depicted for male characters. And I'm like, just,
Yeah.
no.
Because, I mean, here's the thing. A lot of males are depicted with 6 packs, 8 packs.
Yeah.
Okay, you can be tanned and you can be toned and fit and not be 6 pack, 8 pack abs, washboard
Yeah.
abs. You can 100% be strong. And I mean, there are actually men who make Henry Cavill look small.
Yes. Like Jason Momoa.
And yes, Jason Momoa. And not even just like, okay, Jason Momoa, him and Dwayne The Rock Johnson, okay? Both are of island heritage, Samoan, whatever the case may be. Okay, so Samoans, are larger boned, structurally wise people anyways. So they're going to make people look small. But then there are also people who are not of island descent. The same thing. When they made the new, I think it's Superman. There's a new super movie out with Henry Cavill in it, and it's literally Henry Cavill and a white dude standing right next to him who makes Henry Cavill look small, muscle wise. Not just like being them, but muscle wise. Like his muscles and his chest is like twice as broad. And it was just like, dang, I didn't know somebody. But then I'm also looking at like that dude wasn't very much taller than Henry Cavill if I was looking at it correctly. Mm-hmm. And there are guys like my husband who he's shorter in stature, but he is broad and strong.
Mm-hmm.
Like this man is 5'5", but that does not determine how, like, you know, I wish there were more depiction. Okay. I know it is escapism, and I know there is fantasy, and everybody loves to have a 6'5" man. Okay, I get it. I see your appeal.
But sometimes our short kings need time on the pages too.
Yes, that's exactly where I was going. The short kings who are the same size, if not a little bit shorter than the female main character, they deserve page time and they deserve love. And not every man has to have the 6 pack or 8 pack. They can have a little tummy or they can just be toned.
Yep.
And honestly, they're a little bit cozier that way. I'm not gonna lie.
Mm-hmm. There was a book that I read. It was oh gosh, what was the name of it? I love the author. It's Alexis Maness, and I'm wanting to say it was like Vengeance Becomes Her or something like that. It's
Mm-hmm.
been a while since I've read it, and my brain is not completely on right now. But it was the first book I ever read where the male character was described as strong, but like the muscles weren't as defined, and like he had like, I'm trying to think, like there was cushion around the muscles, like the muscles were
Mm-hmm.
there, but there was more like cushion around them and stuff than just rippling abs and stuff, and he had stretch marks, and I was like, yes, more of that.
Mm-hmm.
That's fantastic.
Yeah. See, I think my favorite is like my favorite way to depict like we're strong, but we're not. I'm in the gym for 3 hours a day, every day strong, or like I'm not a warrior like Cassian Azrael Reese type washboard abs ripped just everywhere. My favorite description of just like normal strong, I would say, is like solid.
Mm-hmm.
Because like you're not saying that they're ripped by any means, but like it's a workman's solid. So like they can easily like they're hauling trees or working in construction, that sort of solid where they still eat, burgers and fries and wings and
Yep.
have a tummy on them, but their shoulders, their arms, their legs are strong from years of working. Also, lumberjacks. Mm,
Yes. Like, it
hello.
makes me think of, maybe not as tall as he is, but it makes me think of the Mountain from Game of Thrones.
Mm-hmm.
And he was, he is one of the strongest men in the world, but he has a belly, and
Mm-hmm.
stuff. And I feel like the truly strong men, like that's how they tend to be and stuff, is they have a belly, they have a little bit more on their arms than just their muscles and stuff, and
Yeah.
they're the strongest men, and that body type isn't depicted as much.
Not really.
Yeah.
I can agree with you on that one. Especially not in when you get to stories that are published in novels that are widely spread, like with the big four publishing. Like I see it a little bit more in an indie setting. Like obviously we're seeing more strong and more buff and less of like ripped abs situation and just like toned. And I've seen a couple, I mean, one or two, they're like, oh, they're, especially in Daphne Elliott's Lumberjack series, shoot strong legs, strong body, but not like, ripped like we're talking about. But like whenever you get to stories that are written by people who have like no offense to Lucy Score, but Lucy Score, I mean, Emily McIntyre, I love her to death. Sarah J. Maas, I love her to death. But all of them depict their people ripped,
Yeah.
and it's just like okay, it's the same over and over again. Like and I know that's what sells. I get it. I know that's what sells, but at the end of the day, it's like that's like you were saying. There's not really diversity. How can we ask for diversity in women and not deliver the same for men?
I get very tired of reading straight fantasy romance when all of the men look the same. They all feel like they're the same character. So, it's not always. Tends to be more with traditionally published books, like you said, versus indie.
Mm-hmm.
But it just, I think it just feels like they're all the same character half the time.
Yeah. Especially now that like shadow daddies.
Yeah, you can't tell me that Castile and Rhysand are not virtually the same person.
Yeah, pretty much.
So, like, you know, it's I don't need every male character in the book to be Rhysand. Like, I don't. It's
Mm-mm.
I would like it to be. I'd like I would like the escapism of going to this fantasy world, but I would like to see representation in that fantasy world.
100%.
You know, I
And
want.
I see that more in people who are doing something like what you do. Like there was a little bit in some of Katie Roberts' versions of some of the Olympus stuff, but
Oh, I love Katie Robert.
oh
Love
yes.
her.
And yeah, that's what I'm saying. I see in a little bit more depiction of some equality in her works, especially in her description of Dionysus.
Yes.
Because it was like he's not tall, but he's not short, but he's indulging in the things he likes, but you can also tell he takes care of himself.
Yeah. I made my Dionysus basically a blonde version of Jack Black.
Yes.
Like, that is my Dionysus, and he is a love interest. He is, you know, like he gets to have a lot of fun in my
Yeah.
pages, and he's desired and stuff. And I, you know, that's important to me. That people, you know, I don't want one specific type of people to read my book and feel like they see themselves there. I want lots of people to feel like maybe they can relate to these characters, and not just because of what they're going through, but because of physical descriptions as well and stuff. Like, I don't want any men that read my books to be like, oh, well, I guess in this world every man looks like Henry Cavill and I don't look like Henry Cavill, so this is clearly not what's desired and stuff. I don't want people to feel that way.
Yeah.
And I feel like there just needs to be more representation. I feel like it doesn't hurt anything, and it just makes people feel included and welcomed and loved. And to me, that's one of the most important parts about these stories, is that people feel like they can resonate with it, and not just, you know, not just skinny white girls and not just beefy Henry Cavill dudes. Like, it's
Mm-hmm.
I want real people. And yes, there are some people out there that are built like Henry Cavill, and there are plenty of skinny white girls out there, but that's
Mm-hmm.
not everybody.
Yeah.
No offense to the skinny white girls.
You're still loved. We just
You're still loved. I would just like other people to also receive some of the love.
yeah.
There's
Yeah.
enough love for
100%.
everybody. There are skinny white girls in my books. They're just not the only ones.
Oh my gosh. I have had such a good time chatting with you. I am
Yes.
running out of time.
This has been a great chat. Like, seriously, the fact that it has made me forget that I have COVID is amazing. So
Yes. Thank you so much for joining me. I'll get all of your information from you. Make sure to put it in the show notes.
okay, awesome. Thank you so much. And thank you for having me. I thought this was a really good time.